Hello everyone, now we stand on a cracked sidewalk that smells like hot tar and stale coffee. You're holding your to-go cup in one hand and your ID badge lanyard in the other. The sun hasn't even had a full breath to rise, and already your phone is buzzing, late orders, a manager's snippy text, and a reminder that you've got 6 hours ahead of you before lunch, and then, right as the walk sign blinks green, you see him, a man, maybe in his 60s, collapses face first into the curb across the street. Cars slow. Some honk. No one moves. But your legs do. Your instincts override your day. Coffee drops. Lanyard swings. And you sprint, you kneel beside him. Blood seeping into the pavement. He's breathing, barely, whispering something that sounds like coordinates. He's wearing a tattered ball cap that says, Vietnam Veteran. You remember what your grandfather looked like when he got quiet like this. You remember how he used to flinch at fireworks. This man's eyes have that same glassy look. You don't think twice, you call 911. You cradle his head. You tie off his leg with your own jacket, trembling hands pressing down as cars go around. You're covered in blood before the ambulance arrives. You're supposed to be clocking in, you never do, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and if you're watching this from somewhere far or somewhere familiar. Post your location and local time in the comments. I promise, someone else out there is awake with you. Now, relax, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get into today's story. The ER doctor tells you later that you probably saved the man's life. He was bleeding out from a partially severed artery. If you hadn't compressed it, he might not have made it another 2 blocks. The nurses give you towels. They say the man's name is Frank. And yes, he served 2 tours. Bronze Star. Purple Heart. He'd just left his VA appointment, still carrying his discharge summary in a folder smeared now with his own blood. You get back to your car around noon. You missed your shift. There are 5 missed calls and 2 voicemails from your manager. You listen, her voice is curt. Cold. Not concerned about what happened, just furious that you didn't show. Something about a final warning. Something about how they don't tolerate no-shows, no matter the excuse. You sigh, replaying in your head the look on that old man's face when you held pressure on the wound. The panic in his breath. The quiet thank you through clenched teeth. That had to count for something, right? You try to explain the next morning. You arrive early, wearing a fresh uniform, still smelling faintly of antiseptic. Your manager doesn't look up from her screen. She just hands you a termination form and tells you to be out by 10, no questions. No chance to speak, no job, and now you're walking back to your car, again. Only this time it's with a manila envelope that says, employee copy, and an empty purse that no longer holds your work badge. You sit in the driver's seat for a long time. You think about how unfair it feels. You think about the rent. About your little girl who's still too young to know why mommy's home more now. About the math that doesn't add up with unemployment. About how sometimes, being a decent human feels like the wrong move, but you also think about Frank, the way his grip tightened on your wrist when the ambulance doors swung open. The way he mouthed something about a number and a thank you. The way his eyes locked onto yours, blue-gray, clouded but full of something rare. You don't cry. Not yet. You drive home. You start sending resumes. Fast. Weeks pass. You find part-time gigs. Enough to scrape by. You never hear from Frank again. You assume he's okay. Maybe he forgot your name. Maybe his mind, like your bank account, is stretched thin, and then, one Tuesday morning, the doorbell rings. It's a courier, holding an envelope. Stamped. Thick. Handwritten, your name, inside, a formal letter. Wax seal. 5 stars across the top, no company logo. Just Department of the Army. The first line reads, "We regret to inform you that your heroic actions did not go unnoticed." You blink. You reread. And you sit down on your porch steps, barefoot, heart rattling like a loose belt in an old engine. The letter goes on, "They've reviewed the EMS report. Spoke with witnesses. Even included a statement from Frank, who not only remembered your name, but your face, your voice, the words you said when he thought he was going to die. He called you his guardian, and now, apparently, the Army has something to say about that." You read it twice more, and the final line knocks the wind from you. "A formal recognition will be delivered in person." What does that mean? You don't know yet, but something is coming. And for the first time since you dropped that coffee cup, your chest feels full again, not with anxiety, but something you forgot you had, hope. 3 days pass. You don't tell anyone about the letter, mostly because you're still not sure it's real. You double-check the envelope, no scam signs. The Department of the Army seal isn't photocopied. The contact number on the bottom connects to a real switchboard operator who says, "Yes, ma'am, you've been noted for exceptional civilian service. Yes, something formal is planned." You ask what that means. She says, "You'll want to be home on Saturday at 10 a.m., that's all." So, Saturday morning arrives. You get up early. You wash your face twice. You wear something simple, nothing fancy, just neat. You make coffee but barely sip it. Your daughter is on the floor drawing with crayons. Oblivious to your pacing, and then the sound, a thup-thup-thup rhythm that gets louder and closer until the dishes in the cupboard start to rattle. You think maybe your mind is exaggerating it. But no, outside your window, 2 enormous shapes appear, black and insect-like, slicing the sky, Black Hawk helicopters, descending over your neighborhood park, and they're landing. You sprint outside, neighbors emerge from porches, phones already up, filming. Leaves swirl in the rotor wash. Kids scream with excitement. And as the wind kicks up dust and wrappers, one of the helicopter doors swings open, out steps a tall man in crisp uniform, metals gleaming in the sun, hat tucked under one arm. His walk is unhurried. His presence shifts the atmosphere. No one speaks. He approaches your gate. "Ma'am," he says, extending his hand. "I'm General Bowers. I believe you and I need to talk." It's not a joke. He's flanked by 2 aides, one carrying a folder, the other a small, sealed case. You're so stunned, all you can do is gesture toward the porch. He follows you like he's entering a place of worship. He asks for your daughter's name. He squats to her level, says hello. Then he sits, and here comes the truth, in words that feel heavier than any award. "Frank isn't just a vet," the general begins. "He was a former Special Operations Group commander. When he retired, he was under the radar. But the thing is, people like Frank are never fully out. What you did, most people wouldn't have. Most didn't. But you stopped. You say, 'I didn't know who he was.'" He smiles. "That's what made it pure. Turns out Frank's injury was worse than you were told. The artery was nicked just enough to cause internal bleeding that wasn't fully caught until later. He flatlined once in the ambulance, once again in the ER. Every time, they brought him back. And every time, your name was part of his mumbling consciousness. He remembered everything." General Bowers opens the case. Inside, a civilian medal, golden, laurel-wreathed, weighty. He reads aloud the commendation. "It's real. Official. Permanent, In recognition of bravery and civilian heroism during an unprovoked emergency, the Department of the Army hereby honors. You don't hear the rest. Your ears are ringing. Your eyes burn, he pins it to you, you hear clapping. At some point, the neighbors had gathered close. Applause breaks out like the moment after a national anthem. Your daughter hides behind your leg. Grinning, the general gives you a second letter, this one from the Secretary of Defense, and a third, this one not official, just a scribbled note, from Frank. He writes, I told them you didn't flinch. That when the world moved around me like I didn't exist, you moved toward me. You could have thought I was drunk. Crazy. Dangerous. But you stopped. I remember your voice saying, you're going to be okay, I've got you. I'd heard that voice before, different war, different woman. But yours pulled me back. You sit on the porch long after the helicopters lift off, after the crowd has faded, after your daughter returns to coloring, you think about the way one action, a split second, can fracture the rest of your life. At first, it cost you your job, your security. But then, it brought something else. Not just the medal, but the reminder that decency matters. That maybe it's not loud or glamorous or rewarded on time, but it matters, and it stays. You return inside, medal still pinned, letter still clutched, not knowing what comes next but knowing for the first time in a long time, you're proud, and that's when the second letter, the one from the secretary, makes itself known. It's not just a thank you. It's an offer. They've created a civilian outreach role, liaison to military family support groups. You'd be traveling a little. Speaking at high schools. Offering assistance to vets transitioning out. It pays. Not great, but enough, and it comes with purpose. The same kind of purpose that had your feet running across that crosswalk before you even knew why. That night, you tell your daughter you got a new job, she asks, saving more people. You pause, and say, something like that. 2 months pass, then 5. You accept the position, and it becomes more than a job, it's a calling. You learn quickly that most veterans aren't looking for applause or parades. They want eye contact. Someone who doesn't flinch when they mention the hard stuff. Someone who listens without leaning in too close, as if their stories might stain you. Your first speaking engagement is at a vocational high school near Fort Campbell. You're nervous, clutching index cards like a lifeline. But the students, half of them tuned out, the other half too polite to leave, start to shift when you tell your story. Not the official version, but the one that begins with, I was just late for work and trying to finish a coffee. You show them the medal. Then you take it off. It doesn't mean I'm brave, you say. It just means I stopped. And suddenly you're the one being watched, not for your title, but for your candor. A teacher comes up afterward and says, you said what we try to teach them in civics, but better. Eventually, the gigs roll in steadily. Small towns. Rotary clubs. High school gyms that smell like floor wax and popcorn. You speak at VA centers where the men nod slowly and the women sit with arms folded, eyes measuring your intent. One vet, a lean man in his 60s named Raul, stays behind after a talk. He hasn't spoken much all evening. But now he lingers in the back of the hall. Hands in the pockets of a bomber jacket. You said the guy remembered your voice, Raul says. You nod. Yeah. He swallows. I was rescued once, too. By someone who didn't have to. Civilian. No medal. Just gone before I could thank them. He pauses, then adds, took me 30 years to talk about it. That's when you realize something deeper. This job isn't just public relations. It's soul work. You're a bridge between two worlds. And when someone like Raul opens up, even a little, you're helping carry a memory that was almost lost to silence. One night, you're sent to a women's shelter that's been partnering with the local VA clinic. It's there you meet Delilah. She's early 40s, sleeveless denim jacket, tattoos running up her forearms, posture like someone braced for a punch. She listens to your story, arms crossed, head cocked. Afterward, she approaches. You think it makes you special? She says, half joking, you smile. Not really. I think it made me honest. She watches you for a long moment, then tells her story, not all at once, but in fragments. Her husband was Army. Gone too much, angry when home. She had to choose between staying or surviving. He never got the help, she says. And I never got the apology. But I got free. You say nothing. Just nod. Weeks later, Delilah becomes one of your volunteers. She works check-in tables at vet clinics. She bakes muffins. She jokes loud and often, but her eyes soften now when she meets new faces. That's another truth you've learned. Healing isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet muffin passed to a stranger. One day, after a long day of outreach, you come home to a letter. This one's handwritten. It's from Frank. Again, he writes, they gave me my own role now, helping new amputees. Peer counseling, they call it. I walk in and say, hey, I've been there. It's ugly, and you'll scream a few nights, but you won't die. You saved my body. That gave me time to save what was left of my spirit. He ends with, still not drinking bad coffee. That part stuck, too. You laugh. It's the first time you've laughed in days. Because this work, the kind that stretches your heart and your calendar and your sense of enough, is heavy. But moments like that make it lighter, and then one day, something unexpected happens. You get a call from a young soldier named Matt. He doesn't tell you where he got your number, just that someone passed it along. His voice cracks like old vinyl. I was there that day, he says. You ask, at the scene. Yeah, he says. I was in the second car, behind the bus. I saw you run to him. I froze. I was trained, and I froze. But you didn't. He's quiet, then he says, I've never told anyone that. I still have dreams about it. You sit with the silence, let him speak, just wanted to say. Thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't move. And that's when it hits you, he needed to say that more than you needed to hear it. Your story didn't just ripple forward, it rippled sideways, reaching people who'd stayed silent out of shame, convincing them they weren't alone. That weekend, you add a new line to your talk, you say, sometimes. The people we inspire never tell us. But they carry what we did like a torch. So be kind, you never know what fire you'll start. And one afternoon, during a school visit, a student hands you a drawing. It's of a woman with wings. The student says, she's you. But superhero style. You tape it to your fridge, because the thing no one tells you about doing the right thing is this: it will often cost you everything first, and then, quietly, it gives it all back. It's early spring when the sky finally falls. You've just finished a weekend event, 2 days straight of setting up folding chairs, answering questions about benefits, and hearing the same old, you don't look like someone who'd be working with veterans. You're heading home, finally thinking about dinner and whether you've got clean laundry, when your phone lights up. It's from Central Command Liaison. At first, you think it's a scam call, but then you hear the words, we have an event. VIP level. Black Hawk arrival. You've been requested. Requested. You're told to wear something professional and arrive early. No more detail than that, and so you show up the next morning in the kind of slacks you hate. Hair pulled back, nerves buzzing like faulty wiring. The landing zone is an open field outside the city, ringed by portable barricades and a few MPs checking IDs like it's Fort Knox. There's no stage. No banners, just grass, overcast skies, and the distant thwomp 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 of approaching rotor blades. 2 Black Hawks descend. The noise cuts through your chest. One lands. The other hovers. Dust kicks up like a desert memory. Your heart beats in your ears, then the side door swings open, and a man steps down. Dress uniform. Bars of color on his chest. General, 4-star, you recognize him. Not from TV, but from Frank's bedside photos. It's General Michael Eastwood. Commanding General. Joint Special Operations Command. A ghost to most civilians, and he's walking straight toward you. You want to step back. You want to disappear. Instead, you hold your ground. He doesn't shake your hand. He salutes, you freeze. Then remember what Frank taught you about military courtesy. You return it, awkwardly, but it counts. Then the general says, "You're the one." You blink. "Sir." He nods toward the field. "Frank told me." The civilian. The bus. The artery clamp. The world narrows. You feel wind and metal and heat from engines that haven't fully cooled. You also feel every day since that moment, stacked behind you like invisible bricks. "I don't deserve," you start to say, but the general cuts you off. "You don't get to decide that," he says, and then he reaches into a pocket and pulls out something small, silver, and weighty, a challenge coin, custom made, you learn later. Only a few dozen exist. Engraved with the emblem of the unit Frank served in. Not something passed around lightly. He presses it into your palm. "You didn't freeze," he says. Not everyone in uniform can say the same. "You saved one of my best." And then, just like that, he's back in the chopper. Gone. No photos. No ceremony. Just dust and whirring blades and silence where awe just happened. You clutch the coin like it's burning. Later, at home, you take it out of your pocket and place it next to your medal. It makes the medal look smaller. The next few days feel surreal. The press gets wind of the visit. Speculation erupts. You turn down interviews. You don't need the noise. You've lived the loudest parts already. What you want is coffee with your neighbor. A chat with Raoul. Maybe to see Delilah's latest tattoo sketch, but the universe has different plans, because word spreads, not just in the news, but quietly, in vet circles, through word of mouth and online forums. That's when the letters start, not from journalists. From soldiers. Medics. Gold Star wives. VA nurses. Kids who grew up without their parents because of war. Each one tells you a story. "I froze once too. I lost someone at a bus stop. I was the Frank. And someone saved me. They didn't stay." One letter reads, "I did CPR on my father while waiting for the ambulance. I was 12. He didn't make it. But for years, I thought I failed him. Then I heard your story. You reminded me it wasn't about perfection. It was about trying." Another, "I never got to say thank you to the person who pulled me out of my burning Humvee. But I said it to you. Maybe it'll reach them somehow." You start keeping a box of the letters. You don't read all of them at once. It's too much, but one night, when the insomnia hits hard, you open one marked only with a first name, Jenna. It's a teenage girl. Her dad was killed in a training accident. No war, no combat, just a wrong angle and a truck that tipped. "I hated the army after that," she writes. "I thought they'd just move on too fast. But your story made me wonder. Maybe there were people who didn't move on. People like you. You fold that letter carefully and place it on your desk. Because there it is again, that unexpected truth. Sometimes the act of doing something decent becomes more than memory. It becomes mirror. For strangers. For survivors. For people you'll never meet, you don't ask for a platform. But you use it anyway. At your next public event, someone asks during the QA, would you do it all over again, knowing you'd get fired? The answer's already waiting in your throat. Yes, you say. 1,000 times, yes. And then you tell them something you've never said before. I didn't just save Frank that day. I saved the part of myself I didn't know was worth defending. The crowd is silent, but after the talk, one young woman walks up to you. Quiet. Looks like she's still in high school. She says, I want to be a nurse. But I'm scared I'll freeze, too. You put a hand gently on her shoulder. You might, you say. And if you do, forgive yourself. But keep learning. Because one day, you won't. She nods. Doesn't cry. Just squeezes your hand like it's a pact, and in that moment, you realize something else. This journey that started with blood on concrete and a pink slip. It's still not done. You didn't just find justice. You became someone else's reason to believe it still exists. You never asked for your life to become a touchstone. In fact, for a long while, you tried to shrink back into the kind of normal where no one asks you about trauma in the checkout line or tags you in posts about hero civilians. But stories have roots, and yours keeps growing, and the branches start to twist in directions you didn't expect. First comes the high school speaking circuit. A local civics teacher invites you to tell your story, just once, to a group of sleepy juniors who've never even seen a military base. You walk in expecting eye rolls, but as you talk, about instinct, about fear, about losing your job for doing what felt right, you notice something weird. They're listening. Phones down. Eyes up. Afterward, a kid with a skateboard and chipped nail polish lingers behind and says, that story you told. It's not about war, is it? No, you say. It's about not waiting for permission to be decent. She smiles. That's what I thought. Next comes the VA. They invite you, not as a speaker, but as an advisor. Turns out, veterans' trust in certain programs skyrocketed after your story broke. They want your input on new community protocols. You sit in a room full of people with combat patches and PhDs and realize something strange. They aren't just tolerating you, they're listening. You help write a policy draft about civilian first responder training. Just a test program. Nothing flashy, but it gets funding. Months later, you hear from a volunteer EMT in Wyoming who saved a retired Marine's life using one of the skills from your module. She never knew it had your fingerprints on it. You smile. That's perfect. And then, one Saturday morning, you're sweeping your porch when you hear tires crunch the gravel. You turn, it's Frank. He walks with a slight limp now, heavier than he used to be, but upright. No uniform. Just jeans and a hoodie with an old unit insignia, sleeves pushed up over forearms that still carry faint scars. He doesn't say anything at first. Just hugs you, and it's a real one, deep and quiet, like something buried for too long finally finding air. You ask how he found you. He laughs. VA people. They know everything. You sit on the steps and talk. About recovery. About therapy. About nightmares. About what he remembers, how he saw you through a fog, crouching over him, cussing like a drill sergeant while holding his arteries shut. How'd you know what to do? He asks, you shrug. Didn't. I just didn't want to watch you die. He nods slowly. Then we're even. Because that's what I did overseas. More times than I can count. You're quiet for a while, then Frank says something that stays with you. You didn't just stop the bleeding. You stopped the forgetting. He explains how veterans come home and often feel erased. How the world moves on, and service becomes a paragraph, maybe a bumper sticker. But you, just a bus driver back then, you saw him. Not as a uniform. As a person, you reminded me I mattered. Even when I couldn't stand. He reaches into his pocket and pulls something out. A small patch. His unit's insignia. I've only given this to 2 people. He says. My brother. And now you. You try to protest. He raises a hand. Don't. You earned it. So now, it sits framed on your wall, next to the coin, the medal, and a photo of the 2 of you, smiling like survivors who somehow found family in the debris. Years pass, you never go back to driving a bus. But the woman who once did now teaches med response at the community center on weekends, volunteers at the VA, and trains school staff how to respond to trauma. You get a letter every month or so. Sometimes from someone who saved a life. Sometimes from someone who almost gave up. They all say a version of the same thing. You reminded me not to look away. And isn't that the point? Because the real lesson wasn't that you stopped a man from dying. It's that you stood still in the face of pain, chaos, and bureaucratic punishment, and still chose to help, that you absorbed the blow of an unjust system and turned it into a ripple that saved others. You were never in the military, but you understand the code now. You understand what it means when someone says, I've got your 6. You've lived the weight of carrying someone else's life in your hands. You've felt the loneliness of being punished for doing the right thing, and you've seen what happens when one act of courage refuses to stay small. So yes, you were just a bus driver, just a woman on a route, just someone trying to make rent and maybe read a book on lunch break, until one day, everything changed, and in that crucible, you became something rare, not just brave, but kind when it was hardest, and that's why, when a general lands in your city, when letters pour in from people you've never met, when a man who nearly died shows up just to say thank you, none of it feels like a reward, it feels like a reminder, that decency is still a currency, that people notice. And that sometimes, the best way to honor a life is to keep showing up with yours. Now, let's slow things down, take a breath. Unclench your jaw. Let your shoulders ease a little deeper into wherever you're sitting, because stories like this, real stories, they don't just end. They echo, they follow you into quiet corners of your day. They nudge you when you're standing in a grocery line behind someone who looks like they've had a rough week. They whisper when you see a stalled car, or someone fumbling with a walker, or a kid trying hard not to cry in public. They remind you that you don't need a uniform to serve, you just need presence, you don't need medals. Just a moment of clarity, and the courage to step forward when it's easier to turn away. So tonight, or tomorrow, or next week, maybe you'll remember this story, not because of helicopters or headlines, but because of one small, human moment when you're given a choice, to walk past. Or to kneel beside, and if you choose the second path, even if your hands are shaking, even if nobody's watching, you'll understand something most people never will, that kindness isn't weakness, it's memory in motion, it's the legacy we leave behind when the world forgets our name. So rest easy tonight, you've got good work in you, and someone out there is going to need it.